Hello, welcome to this session. My name is Ioannis Seitanidis. I am Chief Finance Editor of Politis daily newspaper, and I'm going to chair this session. The topic is Cyprus role in tax secrecy, policies for the future. Let's begin. We'll start with Christiana Erotokritou, Deputy Chair of Democratic Party, Chairwoman of Parliamentary Committee of Financial and Budgetary Affairs.
Well, good evening to everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. And thank you for the opportunity to discuss openly this very important topic, which I think is at the heart of many an industry here in Cyprus. Now, let me first begin by saying that I am going to address the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is what has gone wrong in the past regarding Cyprus, and the fact that mistakes have been made, and this has to be acknowledged. However, I am very confident and I'm very encouraged by the fact that these mistakes are acknowledged, they're recognized. There are many, many efforts underway to correct them so that we can move on to the future in a path where Cyprus is a legitimate and acceptable jurisdiction and the hub, a regional and international hub for doing business. Now, as far as the Finance and Budget Committee is concerned, I have to point out that in a legislative approach, we are committed to combating any form of illegal activity. And to this effect, quite a few measures, legislative measures, have been taken. First of all, let me refer to the independent assessment by Manival, the latest one, which Manival is obviously the Committee on AML Measures of the Council of Europe. Now, according to Manival, Cyprus has achieved a record with 0 non-compliant ratings. Now, I think that is a very important fact to take into account, and it is evident of the effort that is being undertaken by the executive, by the legislature, and by regulators, and by all the relevant professions in general, to bring Cyprus and to align Cyprus with all the measures that need to be taken in order to disperse any negative comments or disperse any negative ideas that have circulated in the past. Having said that, I also have to point out to the legislative body of work that has been passed by Parliament in the last few years, the Law for the Prevention and Suppression of Money Laundering and Terrorist Financing of 2021, the UBO registry that is now mandatory, providing law enforcement and tax authorities with crucial information to fight financial crime. We as signatories, Cyprus is a signatory to the Multilateral Competent Authority Agreement for the implementation of CRS. I am sure that my good friend Kyriakos here will refer to this in quite a detail. We have transposed into national law DAC 6 through the law on administration cooperation in the field of taxation, and currently we are debating in Parliament DAC 7, which refers to taxation on digital platform operators. We have the regulatory authorities, the central bank, CISEC, which have strengthened, lately have a lot more measures in order to strengthen the compliance with financial regulations. As of 2018, Cyprus has taken steps to close down shell companies, and there's a very strict central bank circular regarding the requirements of what is and what is not a shell company. We have the decree of the Council of Ministers of 2021 mandating business in the service and retail sector to accept card payments. And between 2020 and 2021, these past few years, we have approved a number of bills relating to the IFR and the IFD framework. So we have a comprehensive framework, legislative framework in Cyprus for the regulation and oversight of investment firms. So overall, from the legislative point of view, as the National Parliament, what we aim for is to look to the future with integrity and transparency. Transparency is very important, at least from our angle, from our point of view, because we want to not only to maintain, but to enhance Cyprus's position as a legitimate and responsible hub for doing business regionally and globally. And I look forward to all the questions and to the dialogue that will take place. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this useful review of legislation measures taken by Cypriot authorities. Now let's see what is the opinion of the industry. Now Kyriakos Iourdanou, General Manager of Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Cyprus.
Thanks a lot, Ioannis. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I think, please allow me to start by saying that, well, playing a bit with the title of the session, Cyprus' role in tax secrecy, possibly it should have been written better, saying Cyprus' role in tax transparency, I would say, because that's the effort that we are pushing on. More or less, Christiana has covered all of the major developments we had in the last few years regarding the enhancement of the overall regulatory and transparency regime for the country. I'll mention a couple of points, though. Yes, I do agree that Manival was, the last Manival report was quite beneficial, good for the country overall, not only for tax matters, but for the AML regime, although we still have quite some way to go in order to be feeling much better at the end of the day. Regarding transparency, although we are not a member of OECD, we do adopt the OECD guidelines, principles, the BEPS projects. Now we are incorporating into legislation specific actions from the BEPS, for instance, transfer pricing, etc. Pillar 1, Pillar 2 are about to also get introduced into the legal system. What is important to mention, though, is that we have also adopted the measures regarding FATCA, the exchange of information with the US authorities, the CRS that was mentioned before by Christiana, which is an OECD measure. We have gone to the open UBO registries. Anyway, seeking information from the company's house was easy. Because open, okay, we didn't know who the ultimate beneficial owner was behind the name or behind the service provider, but the law of 2012 for administrative service providers covered that to a certain extent. And coming from the economic crisis of 2013, the Troika presence and the programs that we had to implement regarding stricter compliance and AML measures, I think all of these work much better in order to establish gradually a much more robust, a much open and more transparent system. As far as the tax legislation is concerned, I think that our tax system is quite open. It's not there isn't much are not hidden taxes or hidden benefits in it. I think it's quite transparent, simple. It's easy to follow. Yes, it needs to be further enhanced. Hence, we as an institute campaigned for a number of years towards the government to proceed with the reform of the tax system. As anyway, after 20 years. Things changed dramatically, so we need to adapt. And today there was the kickoff presentation by the Ministry of Finance that they're starting the study, the review of a new tax system for the country, tax reform. We call it tax transformation because we think that it should also include technology and other modifications of the existing system. So I think we are moving towards a much more open, more transparent, and a more robust financial services system, and especially the tax, since it's the topic of this discussion.
Thank you very much, Kyriakos. From the industry to experts and researchers. Now the floor is Panayiotis Nicolaides from EU Tax Observatory. He's Director of Research.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been to many places in Europe presenting evidence from the observatory, but it's the first time in my home country. And the first time that we present as well in a tax haven. And I will call it like this, and I won't be shy away from this, because despite of the rosy picture of the many changes, one needs to ask what went wrong when we had the golden visas program. And another needs to ask what goes wrong when in April some tax lawyers in Cyprus were found themselves in a sanctions list of the US, or even last week when Guardian found out that a company in Cyprus was hiding several wealth from Russian oligarchs. These are things that are coming up again and again when we ask the question, and we need to frame the discussion about tax evasion in Cyprus, I think, in a different framework. And I would like to do that by giving you 4 areas of tax evasion that we usually researchers focus on, and place Cyprus within this. So the first area is offshore wealth. This is wealth that is held from foreigners in Cyprus. So offshore wealth, at the time being, it's around 10% of the global GDP. It's a very large amount. It's highly concentrated at the top of the income distribution. And in Cyprus, this amount is around 300% of GDP. So it's quite high. Lots of foreign wealth is held in Cyprus. The second thing is foreign offshore real estate. So this is real estate that is held by foreigners in Cyprus. And this has increased a lot, especially in the last decade, because of the different programs that we had. Currently, this is around 5 billion, which is 50% of GDP. And there was a very large increase in offshore real estate. Most of this, I must say, the wealth and the real estate is wealth that is being shifted and hidden around the world. And if you like, I think we are a net contributor to this. And because it is highly concentrated at the top of the income distribution, we are net exporter of inequality in other countries. This is what essentially we are. The third area is profit shifting by large multinationals. Profit shifting by large multinationals amounts to 1 trillion every year, which is about 35% of total corporate profits, which are shifted to tax havens. About 10 to 11 billion are shifted in Cyprus every year, which is 50% of Cyprus GDP. And the last area is different tax schemes that reduce the tax base of other countries by offering specific incentives so that workers can move here. Especially Cyprus has a program where you pay 50% of the tax, of the income tax, if you earn more than 100,000 euros. Now it has been reduced to 55,000. So if you move your tax base here, so it's a sort of beggar thy neighbor policy where you reduce the tax base of other countries in favor of a smaller tax in your country. Of course, this cost because there is tax competition that happens between countries. So apart from the different laws that we try to adopt, and mostly they come from abroad, I would start by this. What we face today, tax evasion, is a policy choice, And there are more things to be done. It's not a law of nature, but it's a policy choice, and more needs to be done in Cyprus to address these issues. And of course, I'm looking forward to discuss several solutions as well.
Thank you very much, Panayiotis. I don't know if we're ready to connect with Paul Monaghan from Fair Tax Foundation. Paul?
Hello?
Hello. Good
Hello?
evening from
People
Cyprus.
hear me okay?
Okay.
Okay, so I'll start right away because I know we are short of time. I want to thank you for the kind invitation to speak at this prestigious forum. And I think the forum is to be applauded for its focus on transparency and for opening up this discussion on Cyprus's role in tax secrecy. So that's the nice bit. But what I do need to say is that, to put it briefly, Cyprus is still viewed by many as both a tax haven, a secrecy jurisdiction, and a centre of corruption. If it wasn't in the EU, there's a possibility Cyprus would even be on the EU tax haven blacklist at times in recent years. Certainly, Cyprus is very high up on the tax haven lists of Fair Tax Foundation, which I represent, but also Oxfam and the Tax Justice Network. This year even saw Cyprus hit an historic low in Transparency International's corruption index. Its score has been on a steady decline since 2012, and the commentary from Transparency International noted Cyprus's poor capacity to investigate and prosecute corruption cases. And I think it's very important that we differentiate between legislation and the implementation of the legislation, because without strong resources for implementation, the legislation itself is useless. And I'll go on to that in a little bit more detail. This may seem a little unfair, as Cyprus has definitely recently made improvements in a number of areas. It is to be commended for its part in now of being a fully functioning member of the global exchange of financial information between tax authorities in different countries. That is absolutely crucial to clamping down on tax evasion and tax avoidance across the globe. And I think it has made some limited improvements on its regulations on foreigners seeking permanent residency by investments, the so-called golden passports, golden visas. There has been some improvements, but more is required. There is still a perception, though, outside Cyprus, that Cyprus resists progressive EU directives. It voted against and tried to stop the European Union's public country-by-country reporting directive. It tried to stop the European Union's proposals to support a 15% global minimum tax. As well as resisting these EU directives, there is a perception that it poorly implements the directives even when they are agreed. And so, for example, just in July, we saw the European Union send a letter of concern to Cyprus because it hadn't even begun the process of implementing public country-by-country reporting directive, which is absolutely crucial for us to see whether multinationals are shifting profits across the world. Cyprus is certainly not alone in many of these shortcomings. London, for example, was until recently Europe's largest hub for Russian oligarchs and their ill-gotten wealth. And a number of countries like Cyprus have withdrawn their public access to the registers of corporate beneficial ownership. But looking forward, which is the focus of this session, what can be done looking forward? What are the policies for the future that would help Cyprus to repair its reputation? I would offer three. The first is that Cyprus should end its blanket opposition to anything and everything that is progressive on tax that comes out of the EU. Whilst Cyprus is in that small group of countries with the likes of Ireland and Hungary who seem to oppose everything and everything that is progressive, it will be perceived to be friendly to tax avoidance and tax evasion. Secondly, it must reopen its corporate beneficial ownership registers, at the very least, to civil society and journalists, as many European countries have already done. And thirdly, it must provide the resources to implement robustly the existing legislation, not least around the taxation of real estate, which, as the previous speaker just alluded to, is a real and ongoing issue in the country, as revealed by The Guardian in their recent expose. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. I see that Mrs. Erotokritou and Kyriakos Iordanou took some notes from this point that for the perception about the Cyprus. I don't know if they want to make, I'm sure, that they want to comment this perception.
Well, in this case, I will not be so polite, Ioannis, and I will leave ladies second. Well, I've heard with a lot of interest what Panos said, and yeah, I wouldn't disagree with many of the things Panos mentioned, especially the 4 points indicating that a country a jurisdiction is tax haven. We don't share personally the view that Cyprus is a tax haven, and of course the references to the passport scheme or the sanctioning of back in April are not actually tax offences, are I would say of other criminal substance, not necessarily of tax, but yes, we do take seriously the percentages that you mentioned, which indicate the magnitude of a problem that we do carry. As far as I also agree with Paul as well regarding the perception Cyprus bears at the moment, and yeah, this is something that it is on our agenda as well, in order to rectify it, not by announcements or just visionary measures, but with hands-on and practical examples. Regarding, though, some of the latest comments mentioned by Paul regarding that Cyprus resists in adopting EU or international initiatives, I'm not sure that I agree with that comment. Firstly, the 15% global tax on multinational was not revoked, or was not something that Cyprus didn't accept it. Actually, it was where some resistance was there. It was in a domestic discussion if the corporate tax rate would increase to 15% for everybody. Well, our suggestion as ICPAC was to implement the 15% global tax immediately, like Ireland did, for instance. Secondly, country-by-country reporting is there as well. Okay, we have some, I will not deny it, there is a slow pace in passing into domestic legislation some EU directives, like the Foreign Direct Investment Screening Regulation, which is something that is on the agenda of Christiana's committee, and it was brought up a couple of weeks ago, Christiana. So Parliament is looking at it as well. We firmly support the FDIS screening process, because that's going to be a very good filter for which investors we host here. The other thing mentioned by Panos regarding the tax schemes, reducing the tax base, and you mentioned the 50% discount on the tax rate for high-earning employees, as we call it. Well, that goes for people that are employed in Cyprus and reside in Cyprus. So we do not have people moving their tax jurisdiction in Cyprus and live somewhere else, but yeah, possibly you have more information that I have, so there's more information that we can drill in there. So in summing up, I would say that yeah, there is an unfavorable image of Cyprus internationally due to a lot of mistakes which we cannot deny of the past. We find them in front of us nearly every month with a lot of journalists or other media or other groups coming from abroad. So we try to rectify things. And the last thing that I would like to mention is, okay, we did have some concerns about some EU initiatives like CCTB or BEFIT. The reason why we had some concerns there was basically due to the principles of subsidiarity and proportionality for Cyprus. Given the small size and the limited range of activity, we consider that there should have been a more detailed impact assessment, both by our government and by the EU, before having a uniform or blanket approach of these initiatives on much smaller states than bigger ones. At least from our side, from the business side, the accountants profession, there isn't any objection or anything else that drives us back from accepting and adopting the European directives in the way that they should have been. I don't know if Christiana would like to add a bit more on that.
Just a couple of comments. I've jotted down the following words: tax haven, golden visas, law firms on the list of natural and legal persons that were violating sanctions. Now, I began my presentation here, our dialogue, by referring to the fact that I will not avoid talking about the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is the damage that has been done to the reputation of Cyprus via the misuse of the investment program, of the so-called golden visas program. Now, let me first just say that, in my opinion, this investment program, provided that it is used by jurisdiction, by a country, in the right way, in the right manner, without cutting corners, could be and should be a legitimate factor that the government can take into account to grow. That is why many a country do have acceptable and respected investment programs that have not been misused like the way the Cypriot investment program has been misused in the past. And unfortunately, this led to the violent shutdown of the investment program, which, had it not been misused, we would be able to still have a proper investment program that would invest in the future of the economy in the medium and the long term, and not as a scheme for some people to try to make a hell of a lot of money very, very quickly. Now, that is a great shortcoming on the behalf of the country and of the industry, and any sectors of any industry that were involved in this. However, this has been terminated. I acknowledge, and I think that all stakeholders, politicians, professionals, the industry, the legislature, the executive, everyone should recognize that it was misused. Mistakes, tragic mistakes were made. Some have to be investigated even more deeply, and they should be led to justice. But this cannot be let to bear weight on the entire future of the entire country. And that is why I do not accept that the misuse of this program, which was great, we paid a heavy price. We will pay a heavy price in the future. We still will. However, it cannot hinder and it cannot be a drag factor forever as far as Cyprus is concerned. So we have to make it right. We have to put it right. We have to take all the legal measures. It's not obviously up to the legislature. It's up to another side of the Cypriot state, which I wouldn't know, but from I understand that steps are being taken. More should be taken. They should be taken more quickly, but at some point, this has to be recognized that it was the grave misuse of a scheme that has now ended. We have to be able to put it behind us, and we have to be able to work together with the legitimate and transparent sections of all professional industries here in Cyprus, so that we can take the country forward. Having said that, I want to make a comment on, I think it was Paul that mentioned to open, if I jotted it down correctly, to open the UBO registry to civic society. This is what I jotted down. Well, the UBO registry, I think, is a great thing. And I think it should be well known and well circulated that we do have this registry in Cyprus, and it is one great step towards transparency, and legitimacy. However, the information sharing between tax authorities of several countries and the information sharing that comes from the UBO registry is not up there for economic gossip. It is there to provide the tools for all tax authorities, either national, for all tax authorities, whether European or global, to evade, to combat, tax evasion. It is not there to make headlines as far as we're concerned. It is not there to make headlines as to how much money or how many assets a legal person or a physical person has. It is there to give all the tools and all the information necessary for all tax authorities in any country to be able to pursue the payment of the right, legitimate and fair tax that one should be paying. Well, there was a mention on offshore entities. Well, offshore, the term offshore, not only in its expression, but also in its implementation, has been abolished in Cyprus for the past 20 years now. Yes. So I cannot answer a question that is factually it's not there, because there is no offshore industry in Cyprus. There isn't an offshore industry in Cyprus for the past 20 years. One final note, even though I do have the reputation that when I start speaking I never stop, and quite a few people justifiably complain about this, but from the point of view of a political party. Now, Cyprus is a small country with limited resources as far as human capital is concerned, zero natural resources actually so far. However, Cyprus has always been geared towards education, services, high-end services, professional services. Now, this can go hand in hand with a justifiable and well-meaning growth. Every jurisdiction that offers services need not have this nasty perception that was quite rightly described, does not need to have this nasty perception following it, provided that it has taken all the necessary steps to be able to answer all legitimate questions and to be able to implement all regulations, directives, and legislation that comes from Brussels. So, being a small country, the choice going into the future for a sustainable economy that grows is technology, is services, is professional services. However, these can be achieved within a transparent and an absolute legitimate framework. So we aspire that these will go hand in hand, and I am sure that if we do persevere in this endeavor, I think that this perception that has been described beforehand at some point, quite soon in the near future, will be not only avoided, but will be entirely eradicated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's always useful to hear what outsiders say about Cyprus, so I think it's time Panayiotis to comment.
I'm both an insider and an outsider. But there are many things to comment. I'm just going to pick the most important. Firstly, probably I would start from the tools that we usually use. And Paul mentioned the country-by-country reporting. So for the audience, these are the reports of multinationals. Multinationals need to report their activity worldwide to tax authorities. This is part of a treaty, and it's very strongly protected. But the EU has voted to be made public from 2024. And I think this is the regulation that Cyprus got a recommendation from the Commission in July that it needs to implement so that the regulation becomes effective from 2024, and we're still very much behind. Same with Pillar 2. Pillar 2 is the minimum tax, the 15% tax on multinational companies. We don't have a lot in Cyprus. It's for gross revenue, worldwide gross revenue at 750 million. We have a few, but implementing 15% of this, we calculate that it would give us around 300 million every year in income, absent from any kind of movements that the companies make. So it has a net fiscal benefit if we implement it, and we are still a little bit behind. And of course, it might be part of the overall tax reform that is coming up, and I hope it moves very fast, because there is no reason why we haven't implemented a comprehensive tax reform in 20 years at Cyprus. So the third thing that I will comment is the public ownership registry, and the beneficial ownership registry. There was unfortunately a setback as someone has taken the case at the European Court of Justice, and yes, in Luxembourg, yeah. And not the European Court of Justice, sorry. And what has been since then, it is illegal to have them public. But we're looking for ways, and it would be good for countries to come up with ways that this can be made public, because these are also data that we as researchers use, and only their availability is able to deter these behaviors. Otherwise, we perpetuate secrecy, and it's very, very easy for individuals to hide behind this veil of secrecy that is created. And it is for us to decide if we would open it up and make it public, or at least find a way that some people have access to it under certain conditions. Fourth point related to this is about taxation in general and wealth. The point is, wealth moves around, and it moves very easily. When the CRS, the automatic exchange of information, was implemented, we have recent research from leaked data from Dubai with investors shifting their money into real estate in Dubai. And of course, the automatic exchange of information does not include exchange of real estate. And this is the case. Once you close one hole, individuals would very quickly, with the help of enablers, move their wealth into different holes that are hidden. And this has been the case also now with the sanctions in Russia. Dubai, for example, the United Arab Emirates were not part of the sanctions, and wealth shifted around to the real estate sector in Dubai and the United Arab Emirates. So it's very important that we include as a policy real estate and other kinds of wealth in the exchange of information to let the tax authorities check on this. The fifth point about the reputation of Cyprus. It is wrong, I think, to assume that this program has taken place because of growth. Growth out of this program, I haven't seen a credible study to show that it has helped Cyprus in the long term, also taking into account the negative benefits that have resulted from this program. I haven't seen a study to show that the net growth effects have been positive, except if you focus on some industries that have benefited from it internally in Cyprus. But the overall population, I don't think has benefited much from the program. It was prone to misuse. The program was structured as such, and with no checks in place, which made it prone to misuse, unfortunately. And democratically, we should ask this question: if we want to define our future democratic society, if we are going to make laws for a few people, or if we're going to make laws that benefit the whole population, because this program really benefited a handful of people. So we made laws for a few people. So this is the reality of this. Let me put a dot here, and I'll be happy.
The comment on what Panos said, and I would agree with him.
I don't know, Politis online, he wants to say something, to comment our conversation.
Okay. Well, wait. Yeah.
Just two quick points. I would like to just say that I think the world has changed since the pandemic, and the race to the bottom in the tax is over. Even Barbados is talking about implementing the global minimum tax. Jersey's beneficial ownership register of company ownership is open now and is free to anybody around the world. So the world has changed. And I think it's great to hear an acknowledgement of mistakes made, but that will not be enough to change the perception of Cyprus as a tax haven, a secrecy jurisdiction, and also as a centre for corruption. And I think it's a matter of public record that Cyprus tried to block the global minimum tax at the EU, and it tried to block the moving forward of the public country-by-country reporting directive at the EU. The fact that it has moved forward is in spite of Cyprus, not because of it, and not just Cyprus, but Hungary and Ireland, etc. And I would just say two things. If you talk to my organisation is rooted in business. We work with businesses, progressive businesses, who want to be open on their country-by-country reporting, who want to be open on their beneficial ownership. The world has changed. I represent a great many progressive businesses. I would say two things. If you talk to the anti-corruption campaigners, the number one ask is an open beneficial ownership register. Cyprus doesn't have that. If you ask the tax justice campaigners around the world, the number one ask is that we see the implementation of corporate country-by-country reporting legislation. Cyprus is yet to enact that. Until those two things are grasped with vigour and energy and positivity, I don't think people's perception of Cyprus will change.
Thank you very much, Kyriakos.
I wanted to say that Panos was absolutely right in his comments just before, and I also agree with Paul's comments, as they do come from outside our house. Therefore, they are more independent from our side. The comment I would like to make is the discussion we had, the reference we made before about Luxembourg, that they have blocked the UBO registers, and also the case that is tried at the European Court of Justice at the moment regarding Tax 6 and the blocking of Tax 6 from Belgian authorities on the merits of hindering of privacy and the right to conduct business. So we've seen that other EU tools like GDPR and privacy, etc., are used by other countries in order to block the transparent application of these tools. I agree that country-by-country reporting is a fantastic tool. CRS also helps in that, so there is no place to hide anymore as it used to be in the past. But yeah, my query is that we do see other countries, I would call them hardcore EU countries, using EU other tools, possibly conflicting, in order to put some hurdles in overall application. And if it is a European cost decision, then it applies to all member states, isn't it, Panos?
Indeed, and many, I think all of the member states, except from a few that started opening them later, the public registries. Indeed, this was the case. So for the moment, I think the European Commission is preparing a revision of the regulation so that it changes, but this would take time. And there is significant diversification of how countries have moved about. I think it goes to the heart of the question is, do we prioritize privacy, or do we find a way to work around it and find some sort of transparency? One way is to give certain access to certain people and trust it to do this job, to check, until there is a new regulation that comes in place. Indeed, many countries in the EU, Luxembourg or Malta or Ireland, move in the same direction. Sometimes we side with them, for example, with the Pillar 2 or the CBCR, the public CBCR data. We sided in the EU as Cyprus in putting some hurdles that were then removed. So usually we take that stance. We go towards the countries that favor less. And of course, it's an internal process because it's a policy choice, and it can be made as well as a government choice of implementing it. For me to overcome these problems that we have, the reputational problems at least, it has to be a very, very big boost of transparency. We have to convince that we are no longer a center. And to do this, we should have a credibility revolution in the way we deal with this. The same way that after the crisis we needed to convince that we have sound public finances, the same way we should do now with this tarnished reputation.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry that time is finished. Thank you very much. This is an issue that the conversation never ends. So, thank you very much for your participation.